Check your last 3 grocery receipts, side by side. You already know what you're going to see. The total keeps climbing, even when the cart looks smaller. This is not a feeling. This is not inflation is over, like the headlines keep promising. Food prices in the United States rose 3% in the 12 months ending in June 2026, following a 3.1% annual increase in May. Grocery store prices climbed 2.7% year over year, while restaurant and takeout prices jumped 3.4%. And according to the government's own data, grocery prices rose again in June, the 5th monthly increase of 2026 alone. But averages hide the real story. Somewhere behind that 2.7% number is a burger patty that costs more than it ever has in American history. A carton of orange juice quietly becoming a luxury item. A chocolate bar that keeps shrinking while the price tag keeps growing. Some of these foods are climbing because of drought thousands of miles away. Some because of tariffs signed in Washington. Some because of a disease killing trees in Florida groves that have fed this country for 100 years. We built this list from federal price data, USDA forecasts, and the most recent 2026 reporting available. We are counting down from number 12 to number 1, the food getting more expensive month after month, faster than almost anything else in the American grocery cart. Some of these will surprise you. Number 1 might already be sitting in your freezer right now, quietly costing more than it did last time you checked. Before we jump into today's countdown, if you enjoy fact-based breakdowns that explain what's really happening behind the headlines, not the clickbait, just the data, make sure to subscribe. We cover the trends, numbers, and stories shaping everyday life in America, from rising costs and housing to the economy and much more. And if you find this video helpful, a quick like really helps the channel reach more people. Now, let's count down the 12 foods getting more expensive every month. Bananas were supposed to be the one thing inflation couldn't touch. For decades, economists called them inflation-proof, a fruit so efficiently grown and shipped that its price barely moved year after year, even while everything else got more expensive. That streak is now broken. By December 2025, bananas were averaging 65.6 cents a pound, a 6.7% annual increase, despite some monthly dips. Consumer price data showed banana prices rising 0.4% in a single month, capping a 5.4% increase since April. The reason isn't drought or disease, it's trade policy. The United States imports the overwhelming majority of its bananas from Guatemala and other Central American countries, with virtually no ability to replace that supply domestically. When new tariffs landed on those imports, there was nowhere else for the cost to go but straight onto the price sticker. Industry estimates put the added cost to American consumers at roughly $250 million a year, spread across a fruit that used to be the cheapest item in the produce aisle. It's a small increase compared to what's coming later on this list, but it's proof that even the most recession-proof grocery item in America isn't safe anymore. Butter has been on a strange ride in 2026, falling in some months, spiking in others, but trending in a direction that's hard to ignore if you bake, cook, or just like toast. USDA forecasts for 2026 put butter at $1.87 a pound, a 19-cent increase from the previous month's forecast alone. Then came the actual weekly numbers. In mid-June 2026, USDA market reports showed butter climbing 5.8 cents in a single week to $1.66 a pound, even as cheddar cheese moved in the opposite direction. Analysts expect the butter price forecast for 2027 to climb another 10 cents per pound year over year. It's not the most dramatic story on this list, but dairy pricing has a habit of sneaking up on people. A few cents here, a few cents there, until the block of butter that used to disappear from your grocery budget without notice is suddenly something you think twice about buying. If your sweet tooth felt expensive this year, it's not in your head. The USDA's Economic Research Service projects sugar and sweets prices will rise 6.7% in 2026, the fastest pace of any food-at-home category the agency tracks, and well above that category's own 20-year historical average. This isn't just candy bars. Sugar is an ingredient in nearly everything on the shelf. Cereal, soda, baked goods, condiments. When the raw commodity climbs, The increase ripples through hundreds of products at once, quietly, without a single headline about sugar prices ever running on the evening news. Compare that to the overall grocery forecast. The broader food-at-home basket is only expected to rise about 1.7% in 2026, meaning sugar and sweets are climbing at nearly 4 times the pace of groceries as a whole. It's the kind of increase that hides in plain sight, tucked into products you'd never suspect. This one should not be happening, and that's exactly why it belongs on this list. Fresh vegetables are usually one of the most stable categories in the entire grocery store. Not in 2026. The USDA now predicts fresh vegetable prices at retail will climb 7.7% this year, with a possible range as high as 11.1%. That's not a typo, and it's not a one-month blip. It's an entire category: lettuce, peppers, onions, squash. The produce aisle staples every American household buys weekly, moving at a pace that outpaces beef, outpaces dairy, and nearly matches sugar itself. Weather, labor costs, and transportation are all part of the story, but the bigger point is this. When the category that's supposed to be your budget safety net starts climbing at 7.7%, there's nowhere left in the grocery store to hide from rising prices. Reach for a soda, a bottled tea, or a canned energy drink, and you're paying more than you were a year ago. And it's projected to keep climbing. USDA forecasts non-alcoholic beverage prices to rise 5.2% in 2026, above that category's historical average, driven in part by coffee costs. That last detail matters. Coffee concentrate, flavoring, and processing costs bleed directly into sodas, bottled coffees, and ready-to-drink teas, meaning a crisis happening on farms in Brazil and Vietnam ends up raising the price of a can of cola on a gas station shelf in Ohio. Add in packaging costs, aluminum, plastic resin, glass, and you get a category that keeps climbing almost invisibly, one vending machine and one grocery run at a time. In 2025 and into 2026, the United States imposed steep new tariffs on the countries that supply most of the shrimp Americans eat. India was hit with a 25% tariff, Indonesia 19%, and Vietnam 20%, while Ecuador faced a comparatively lighter 15%. Some shrimp tariffs have climbed as high as 50% for major Asian exporters, forcing importers to either scramble for new suppliers or quietly raise prices at the counter. Indian shrimp exporters are now being told they can no longer rely on a single market like the United States, and are being pushed to diversify just to survive. The result for American shoppers is a shrimp aisle in flux, supply chains rerouting through Ecuador, prices shifting week to week, and a favorite seafood staple that's no longer the reliably affordable option it used to be. This one is almost entirely a trade story, and it's still unfolding as this video is being made. In mid-2025, the US government withdrew from a decades-old trade agreement with Mexico and imposed a 17.09% anti-dumping tariff on most fresh tomato imports. Just weeks before this video, in July 2026, the U.S. International Trade Commission formally upheld that tariff, rejecting a request from Mexican producers to remove it, meaning the added cost isn't going anywhere anytime soon. Meanwhile, on the supply side, Mexican tomato production is projected to fall 9% in 2026, driven by drought in key growing regions and reduced planting tied to the trade uncertainty itself. Some Mexican states have already reported year-over-year tomato price increases of more than 100%. Add a shrinking supply to a new tariff, and you get a slow, steady squeeze that's just beginning to show up at American registers. A squeeze that, unlike some items on this list, is backed by a legal order that's designed to last. Olive oil should be getting cheaper right now. It isn't. Not for American shoppers. Globally, production has stabilized after years of brutal Mediterranean drought. But two things are keeping US prices elevated anyway. First, tariffs. European Union olive oil now faces US tariffs of up to 15%, while Tunisian olive oil carries a 25% country-specific tariff introduced in 2025. That matters because the US olive oil market is structurally dependent on imports. Domestic production, mostly limited to California, simply cannot meet national demand. Second, the weather threat hasn't actually gone away. Just this week, reporting confirmed that severe droughts and extreme heat across southern Europe destroyed large parts of recent olive harvests, and Spain's own Olive Producers Association is already warning that a 37% decline in flowering fertility could trigger the next supply shock for the 2026 to 2027 harvest. For a country that produces almost none of its own olive oil, that's a warning American shoppers should be paying attention to. This is the one that hits hardest if you grew up thinking of orange juice as a cheap breakfast staple. It isn't cheap anymore, and in some parts of the country, it's becoming a genuine luxury item. Some premium orange juice brands are now retailing between $8 and $10 a gallon. The cause is one of the most dramatic agricultural collapses in modern American history. Florida's orange crop is projected at just 12 million boxes for the current season, down from a peak of 244 million boxes in the late 1990s, a decline of more than 95% and a level not seen since the Great Depression. The culprit is citrus greening, an incurable bacterial disease spread by a tiny invasive insect, combined with repeated hurricanes tearing through what groves remain. It's not just Florida. Brazil, the world's largest orange juice producer, is expected to see harvest decline as much as 13% for the 2026 and 2027 seasons, and Egypt's citrus production is falling by roughly 12% as well. When the world's major citrus regions struggle at the same time, there's no cheaper alternative supply left to fall back on, and experts say prices are unlikely to come back down anytime soon, because citrus trees take years to mature, and the disease still has no cure. Here's the part of this story that genuinely doesn't make sense on the surface, and that's exactly what makes it worth explaining. Cocoa, the raw commodity, is actually getting cheaper. Wholesale cocoa prices have fallen roughly 70% from their late 2024 peak. And yet, U.S. chocolate prices were still running approximately 14.4% higher in early 2026 compared to the same period a year earlier. So why hasn't the relief reached the candy aisle? Chocolate manufacturers typically hedge their cocoa purchases 12 to 24 months in advance, meaning the sky-high prices locked in during 2024's record spike are still working their way through production budgets in 2026. Executives at major candy companies say they remain hedged above current cocoa prices, which limits how quickly they can pass along any savings to shoppers. The consumer impact is real and ongoing, and chocolate makers have responded not just by raising prices, but by shrinking bars and reformulating recipes to stretch scarce, expensive cocoa further, meaning you're paying more for less twice over. For millions of Americans, this is the one that actually hurts every single morning. Coffee spent 2025 in genuine crisis, and 2026 hasn't brought the relief everyone was promised. Arabica coffee futures surged to a historic high of $4.41 a pound in February 2025, driven by brutal climate disruptions in Brazil and Vietnam, the world's two largest coffee producers. Tariffs made it worse before they made it better. New U.S. tariffs cut coffee imports from Brazil by 46% in a single month at their peak. Most green and roasted coffee eventually received tariff relief in November 2025, but Brazilian instant coffee is still stuck facing a 50% U.S. tariff, with exporters left waiting for clarity months later. And here's the part that explains why your bag of coffee still costs more, even as the headlines say, prices are easing. Retail prices lag the commodity market by months because roasters are still working through higher cost inventory, forward contracts, and elevated freight costs from earlier in the crisis. Add in ongoing shipping disruptions tied to Middle East tensions pushing up fuel and insurance costs for every shipment. And it's easy to see why your morning cup still costs noticeably more than it did just 2 years ago, and why that 5.2% rise in beverage prices we mentioned earlier traces straight back to this one crop. Number 1 is the one everyone's been feeling at the grill, and it's not close. Ground beef, historically the cheapest, most reliable protein in the American kitchen, has become something close to a luxury item. The average price of ground beef hit a record $6.67 a pound in early 2026, and by spring it had climbed past $6.70 nationally, with some regional reports putting it as high as $6.89 a pound. That's a 20.5% increase in just 12 months, the fastest annual jump since 2018, and roughly a 72% increase since January 2020, when ground beef averaged just $3.88 a pound. The cause isn't a temporary shortage, it's structural. The total U.S. cattle herd has fallen to 86.2 million head, the smallest count since 1951. The breeding herd, the females that determine future supply, has dropped to just 27.6 million head, the lowest level since 1961. Years of drought across Nebraska, Oklahoma, and Texas made it too expensive for ranchers to hold onto cattle, so herds were sold down instead of rebuilt. Meatpacking plants across Nebraska, Texas, Pennsylvania, and Tennessee have already closed or cut operating hours in 2026, and industry experts warn more disruption could still be coming. The forecast offers no real relief. The USDA estimates beef prices could climb another 10% in 2026, and possibly as much as 18%. One agricultural economist put it bluntly: there is nothing to suggest any relief from high beef prices is coming anytime soon. For a food that built the American backyard barbecue, that's not just a price increase. That's a fundamental shift in what protein costs in this country. And unlike a lot of items on this list, this one isn't reversing course anytime this year. 12 very different foods. 12 very different reasons. Drought, disease, tariffs, shrinking herds, hedging lags, trade disputes that started before some of you were watching this channel. But they all land in the same place: your grocery cart, every single month, quietly costing a little more than it did the last time you checked. The good news, if there is any, is that not every category on this list is permanent. Bananas could stabilize. Cocoa's crash could finally reach the candy aisle. But beef, orange juice, and coffee are tangled up in problems that take years, not months, to fix. Herds that take years to rebuild. Trees that take years to mature. Trade disputes with no expiration date in sight. Thanks for watching. If this breakdown helped you understand what's actually happening at the register, subscribe for more deep dives into the numbers behind the headlines. And let us know in the comments which one of these hit your own grocery bill the hardest.